St. Paul tells the Christians in Corinth something that might have been a bit strange to them when he says, glorify God in your body. And the reason why is because Corinth, being a rich, cosmopolitan, and very Greek city, when Paul was writing to them at that time, they had a very different worldview, particularly with regard to the human body, because they had a kind of dualistic understanding, the body and the soul being separate, and the body being less important. And in fact, in some ways, the Greeks would see the body as a kind of prison in which the soul was trapped, like a ghost in a machine, and that ultimately life is meant to be directed towards being free from the body and the soul going up into the eternal realm. So that's how they saw the body. It was a rather negative view. And because of that, they were extremely lax when it came to sexual morality. They would publicly practice things like pedophilia, incense, prostitution, everything that you can possibly think of. They did. So that was the reality at the time. They claimed very little objective dignity to the human body. Now, St. Paul turns this 180 degrees when he says, glorify God by your body, because he talks about sexual immorality, and he actually spells out what sexual immorality looks like more than once in his writings to his communities. He tells them that we cannot achieve meaning and happiness if we just do whatever we feel like with our bodies, as if we were animals and we were meant to follow our instincts and live only for physical pleasure. He tells them when Christ saved us, he came to save not just the soul, but the whole human person, body and soul. And he teaches that we are meant to understand ourselves, that we really are body and soul, one united, that we are not souls possessing a body, nor is the body containing the soul. Rather, we are body and soul. They both are who we are. So ever since baptism, our bodies have been members of Christ, and our faith has made us one spirit with him. That's why all the sacraments, if you notice, are physical. They are tactile. They are visible, because we are meant to receive God's grace through our bodies and into our souls. That's how important the body is. Now, you may be thinking about the fact that when we die, the body stays here on earth and decays and turns into dust, but the soul separates from the body. So how can we say that the body and the soul are one together? Well, it's because we were never really meant to die. We were meant to continue to live. Death is a curse as a result of original sin. And so the soul, when it leaves the body, because it actually in its own self cannot die, the soul is immortal. So we're all immortals, if you think about that, right? The soul is in an unnatural state, St. Thomas Aquinas would say, that it is incomplete without its body. Even though people, when they are judged worthy of heaven at the moment of their death, and they live in heaven in their souls, there's still an incompleteness about it. Not that they are unhappy, they are fully happy. And only by God's supernatural grace can the soul be reunited into the body once again, and that's what we refer to as the resurrection of the body. And everyone's going to be resurrected, St. Paul says, both the just and the unjust. Those who were unjust, they will be resurrected to eternal death in hell. And those who are resurrected, who were just, will be resurrected to eternal life in heaven. So that's the reality there with regard to the soul and the body at the end of the age. Now, in this time, everything we choose to do in this life either brings our body and our spirit, our bodies, our souls closer to God or further from God. So it was strange for the Corinthians to hear Paul telling them that they should glorify God in their bodies by staying pure of sexual immorality. Now, having said that, it does sound even a bit strange in our own time, because the world around us has actually revived the ancient pagan view of the human body. That's what's so ironic about the whole thing, that with regard to so much sexual excess in our own time, it's considered progressive, right? It's considered progressive to accept all of the sexual license that is taken in our culture, but it's not progressive, it's regressive. It's going back to the way things used to be, when things were worse. So that's something for us to keep in mind. Now, many of the most common and prominent sins of our society flow actually directly from the mistaken idea that the body doesn't really have a spiritual meaning, and therefore we can do whatever we want with it. One really good example of a prominent sin of a sexual nature is that of pornography, which is a lucrative industry, and it is rampant. It is epidemic, we can say, throughout our society. And it shows the pagan view of the relationship between body and soul. Pornography treats the human being as if they were only bodies, only objects to be consumed and enjoyed. And because you can't treat a human being, their body, like it's a thing, when we do that, when someone looks at pornography, they are also doing damage to their own souls. And those who participate in displaying pornography, who are part of that industry, are also destroying themselves, destroying their own souls. And right now, what we are dealing with so much in our culture is the compulsive nature of pornography, of how it can become even an addiction for so many. And that's because pornography is free and accessible. It appears to be anonymous, even though it really isn't. And also, it is so strong, it has such a powerful impact on the brain that it can take deep root. And when that happens, it even destroys families. If you are struggling with compulsive sexual behavior, such as pornography, even in a way where you can characterize it as an addiction, know that there is hope for freedom. And those who know someone that's struggling with it, you can tell them the same thing. In fact, when we receive people in confession who do confess this sin, or their sins of any kind of compulsive sexual nature, we give them a card that has the word reclaim on it. It's the name of a program, and there's a list of different kinds of services that they offer. There is also a really good 12-step program called Sexaholics Anonymous, very powerful as well. And we don't have time to go into all the details of these programs, but I can say that there are at least two things that a person needs to be healed of compulsive sexual behavior. And the first is prayer, 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 right? And the second is other people, other people. Compulsive sexual behavior, especially pornography, cannot be conquered without the help of others, such as what you might find in the Reclaim program or in Sexaholics Anonymous. So that is just an example of the sexual immorality that we struggle with. Now, the Christian life is never just about avoiding sin. It's not just about that, right? Leaving sin, avoiding sin is the first step towards growing in holiness, towards following Jesus Christ. And so, as St. Paul says, we are meant to glorify God in our bodies. And how do we do that? Well, there's many ways, but just a few examples. One is to learn the virtue of modesty. Modesty is the protector of purity. And so we do that by avoiding vulgar language and humor. We also avoid sexually explicit entertainment. We also avoid wearing clothes that are provocative and instead favor clothes that are dignified, that are elegant. So we show our own sense of respect when we do that. The other is that we can also make a point of serving others bodily, particularly those who are sick, who are elderly, who are physically disadvantaged, practicing what is called the corporal works of mercy, to put another way, the bodily works of mercy. And Christians have been known for doing this from the earliest days of the church. It's one of the reasons why conversions spread all throughout the Roman Greco world. It's because they saw these acts of charity from the Christians towards those who were suffering. Christ, who suffered so much in his body, has taught us that all people, whether weak or strong, beautiful or deformed, share the dignity of being loved by God. And we are called to be ambassadors of that message through our bodies. So let us glorify God in our bodies. As we continue with today's Mass, let's thank Jesus for revealing to us the truth of our humanity. And as he offers his body and blood to us in communion, let's offer to him ours as well.